Buckeye Talk is about to begin. Hey, 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 come on in.
Welcome back to Buckeye Talk. I'm Stephen Means and Stefan Krajisnik. We're coming to you from the press box inside of Memorial Stadium after Ohio State's 34-16 win over Illinois. We're watching this game while also, we're not watching this game. We're talking about this game while watching Oregon and Indiana play as well, because it does feel like the winner of that game has a good chance of also getting to Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship game, potentially playing Ohio State, especially with the way it's playing as a 6-0 team and 3-0 in the Big Ten. Stefan, if you had to pick one word to describe Ohio State's performance against Illinois, what would it be?
Weird, probably the best way I would describe it, because it's a mixture of, I thought Ohio State played pretty well. I thought Ohio State dominated the game for the most part. I know Ryan Day was saying that it felt like there was times where they let the foot off the pedal, but this game was never really in question. Frankly, when Ohio State went up 10-0, and never even after that at any point did it feel, kind of odd or like that game could get tighter than it needs to be. But it was weird in the sense of, it felt like, yet again, Ohio State didn't necessarily play its best game. It didn't play to the best of its abilities and kind of lean into its strengths. But at the same time, they dominated, and they got a top 20 road win. And I think what maybe validates a little bit of how I feel is that, Ryan Day talked about post-game how they kind of had to remind the players that, hey, this is a top 20 road win. Like, this is a great win. And even though they didn't feel like they necessarily played their best, so that means, like, the team and the players are understanding that they could be better and they could play a cleaner game. But I think at the end of the day, it just felt like Ohio State could have looked a lot better than it did and had chances to really kind of do a lot of things that we expected them to do, right? Like unleash Julian Sayin, really put this offense out there, really make a statement on the road, and not just win, but win kind of in style. And that just, it doesn't seem to be, the style points don't really matter a ton to Ryan Day. And they kind of did what they needed to do. And you walk away being like, this team is still the best team in the country, but you're halfway through the regular season, and it feels like they haven't really played their game yet against one of the better opponents.
As we were on the field after the game and watching a bunch of people carry around a wooden turtle, I overheard a conversation between Charlie Dickey, who's one of the offensive analysts with the offensive line room, and they got the three guys in there working with Tyler Bowen. It's him, Charlie Dickey, and then Marcus Johnson all working together in there, which I think has worked out very well, having multiple different voices, multiple different perspectives in there. And he was talking to Carson Hinsman as they're walking off. He said, we left a lot of meat on that bone after this game. My word is uninspiring. I think it is what it is. I feel like I'm saying the same thing we said after a 24-6 win over Washington a couple of weeks ago, where we spent the entire first half kind of banging our heads up against the wall going, why are you playing football like this? And then you look up and it's like, oh, you're up by 3 scores. What am I complaining about? Right? It was 20-3 at halftime, and I felt like, why are you not up by more points? And there's the red zone is the red zone issues, and of course we'll continue to get into that, because it feels like last week they fixed the red zone issues because they played a team who gives up touchdowns to everybody in the red zone, and then those issues went right back to being issues against Illinois this week. So maybe it wasn't fixed. You just played a team who couldn't necessarily test you. They were 6 for 6 in scoring in the red zone, but only 4 of them were. Only 2 of them, I think, were touchdowns, and the rest of them were field goals, if I have that math correct. Obviously, we'll rewatch the game on Monday and go into this more deep. But I feel like every single game this year, Ohio State, every game against a decent opponent. So we're talking Texas, we're talking Washington, now we're talking Illinois. And those 3 games, we've left those games feeling like Ohio State didn't finish its meal. And I don't know whether it should be something that is alarming or it should just be something of, okay, that's good. That means there's more for them to work on. Because Ryan Davis said it, the receivers, everybody wants every game to look like the Minnesota game where they came out early and they were aggressive and they won 42-3, where they controlled that game all the way through and it showed up on the scoreboard. But in the other 3 games they've played against decent opponents, meaning Texas and the other 2 Big Ten games, they've dominated and controlled those games the exact same way. It just isn't showing up on the scoreboard. But does it matter?
I think that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out right now. Is it feels like we're almost going back to the identity question. Like Steve and I, we were talking about it in the press box at one point during the game when we just kept seeing 12 personnel, 13 personnel, 14 personnel, over and over. It felt like. And it's either Ohio State wants to be as versatile as possible on offense, and they're working through these different personnel packages to really try to perfect them so that when you get to the playoff, you can do anything at any point and be successful. And if that's the case, and they still know that, hey, But when it comes time to turn back to the Ohio State we know, where they're leaning on their receivers and they're explosive, they can flip that switch, right? Like we had that flip the switch conversation. I
Right.
think probably after the Washington game, kind of having that flip that switch conversation. And if that's the case, you feel okay, right? You're like, all right, they'll work some things out, they'll figure it out. If it doesn't work, you know what your fastball is, you go back to it. That's fine if that's the case. It's just like we've seen it so many times now where I'm wondering, does Ohio State think its fastball is these multiple tight end personnel packages and trying to control clock and just leaning on its defense? And I think they can still win games that way. Like you made the joke of like, Ohio State's going to play 16 games like this and win a national title. We're going to have no idea how to feel about it. And that could very well happen. But you do worry about a game like the one at the end of November against Michigan, where maybe that plays into what Michigan wants to do or something along those lines. And you cost yourself a game that you don't need to, maybe because you're wrong about what your identity is, or at least you haven't figured out exactly what your identity is. I just keep going back to the word weird because I don't know if it's Ohio State trying different things to be perfect everywhere, or if it's Ohio State struggling to really realize what its identity is.
It's almost like they're going against their best interests for the sake of their best interests.
Yeah. Going against your strength in the hopes of finding your best interest.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't like.
Does that make sense? Text us 614-350-3315. Did that sentence make any sense?
Like, this we know what's good for Ohio State. Julian Sand and these receivers and these weapons in the pass game and getting the ball out to the perimeter. But like, is that what's good for Ohio State? I don't even know if I'm making any sense. Do you see what this offense does to us? You see what it does? Because the defense is amazing, right? I thought the defense played really well, and then the last couple of drives, they started giving up some stuff. And a lot of that was because they put the backups in way too early, and the backups were not, Ryan Day said it, they took their foot off the gas a little too much. So as a result, mix that with Brett Bielema trying to make the score look better than it was. Like, I get it, it was 34-16, but I'm going to be real with you. This game was played really more like it was 34-13, 34-9 for most of the afternoon. Luke Altmaier, 30-for-44 for 248 yards, a touchdown, and his first pick of the season. Like, they didn't do – Beatty was 7-for-48 on 12 targets. A lot of that came late because – again, Brett Bielema wouldn't take his foot off the gas because it looks better to lose 34-16 than it does to lose 34-9, because then you can go, hey, everybody else struggled to score against Ohio State. We didn't. You did too. You just started scoring when they put the backups into the game. But from an offensive perspective, it's like I keep coming back to the question of what is all this for? Like, who is this for? Why do they need to be able to execute I formation? Why do they need to be able to execute 14 personnel at the 26-yard line? Why do they need to be able to execute, you handed the ball off to Nate Roberts? Like, what game are you preparing for when the alternative is you do what you did in the playoff last year where you did all of this, then you got to the playoff and just started throwing the ball around the yard? The only reason it's a worry is because if you never do it and then you just think, oh, if we just turn it on, flip the switch, as we keep saying in the playoff, what if you go to flip the switch and the light doesn't come on? And again, you're overreacting in a situation where they still covered, they still scored 34 points, and they were never in danger of actually losing this game. But I think now we've moved past that towards trying to figure out what is this process and what is the end result of this process going to be, because they're clearly working through some things. I just am trying to figure out what is the purpose of it once you get on the field with Michigan in November, with Oregon or Indiana or whoever else may meet in the Big Ten Championship or in a playoff game. What's the scenario where you absolutely needed to feel like we spent 4 months working out I formation and we're going to go, thank God they spent 4 months working it out because they need it right now.
Yeah, because you watch them and you see them convert on a QB sneak easily, and you're sitting there asking yourself, like, so why are you handing it off to Roberts?
Are we being negative right now?
I don't think we're being negative. I think we're trying to figure out if Ohio State played Miami tomorrow in the national championship game,
yeah,
what does it look like?
And based on personnel, you would think it would look one way. But based on how they have played football for for half the season now.
If tomorrow was the start of the college football playoff and you were writing for cleveland.com a projected depth chart for Ohio State, what's the personnel? I'm putting 2 tight ends.
I wouldn't even think twice about it.
Yeah.
In fact, I would say that they would spend more time in 12 and 13 personnel than they would 11 personnel. But if you look at their roster, you would say the polar opposite of that.
And they did a lot of that in the playoff last year, but they didn't necessarily call plays that just directly reflected that, which is even more interesting because I think Max Clare is a better receiving tight end than G. Scott was.
Jeremiah Smith had 5 catches on 7 targets for 42 yards, and another let's get JJ to New York touchdown on a goal line fade where he just killed the dude at the line of scrimmage. Carnell Tate, 4 for 41 on 7 targets. Max Clare, 4 for 38 on 6 targets. Brandon Ennis, 2 for 20 on 3 targets. No, excuse me. Bo Jackson, 2 for 20 on 3 targets. Brandon Ennis, 2 for 14 on 2 targets. Will Kazmarek, 1 catch for 7 yards on his only target. CJ Donaldson, a 4-yard catch on his only target again. Julian Sands threw it 27 times. They ran it 37 times. And even if you take Julian Sands' two runs out the game, one of which was a QB sneak and the other one was a scramble, okay, that's 35 to 27. And I get it, it's less plays, but we're past that. We're past the it's less plays. We're past we're getting the ball in plus territory, so there's not times to be explosive, which is what Ryan Day said. But he said something similar against Iowa in 2022 when they were getting the ball on their plus end of the field of the field, and they were still doing some of this stuff. It's not about their scenarios, it's about what you do with those situations. And what they're doing with those situations is very different than I think anybody from a bird's eye view who would look at this roster and say, oh, this is what they would do in those situations, right? Caden McDonald ripped the ball away from an Illinois player. I would think you'd take a shot on first down.
Yeah.
They would think, let's put 4 tight ends on the field and try to run the ball.
And I think the part of what was kind of puzzling at the start, again, we're talking about Ohio State winning by 18 on the road against the number 17 country.
It's not. I think we're past the chastising it point and just now trying to understand it better.
Yeah. Because that's the thing is if this is what Ohio State kind of wants its offense to be, I guess I'm fine with it because it's working.
Right.
So it's we're not questioning it from that perspective. It's just I think we're trying to grasp how maybe we were so wrong in the offseason of what we thought this offensive identity was going to be. It's because Brian Hartline is the offensive coordinator.
So you're thinking that, it might just lean towards passing game when offensive coordinator, 5-star quarterback who's got a nice arm, it might just lean that way. I guess Keenan Bailey said it a lot in the fall. I got 5 guys I think I could play immediately. And again, sounds good, right? That means if we need to play 5 tight ends, we'll play 5 tight ends. I don't think it registered in anybody's head that him saying that wasn't him saying that because he was going to bat for his room. It was him saying that because we're going to play 5 tight ends every game.
But the thing is, you say 5 tight ends. I mean, it is mostly 2 tight ends. 5 is kind of the extreme. We have seen some of that. But the puzzling part is I think you and I would both be understanding of Ohio State running 2 tight ends because Max Clare can kind of be like a slot guy for you.
Yeah.
But that's not entirely how they're using their 2 tight end sets.
No, it's
they got an illegal touching because Max Clare was lined up like a left tackle.
Yes, and he wasn't supposed to be. It probably is over dramatic. 5 tight ends. Yeah, but we saw a substitution where they took a tight running back off the field and they put another tight end on the field. You're right. There are 2 tight ends who are getting the most snaps because they're the starters. But Bennett Christian and Jelani Thurman and Nate Roberts have roles. We are seeing more packages that are tight end heavy than we are seeing running back heavy, wide receiver heavy, right? You would think, you look at this roster and go, they're going to play 4 wide receivers sometimes. We haven't seen that yet, right? Sometimes JJ in the slot, but how often are we looking out there and it's JJ is the only wide receiver and it's a bunch of tight ends out here? And to the point of we're trying to figure out what this team's identity is. We've done 2 separate videos on our YouTube channel at Buckeye Talk on YouTube, where I've presented the question, is the tight end room the best room on the roster? And twice, you and Gillis have gone, do you see what's at wide receiver? Yeah, but this coaching staff keeps telling us the tight ends are the best room on the roster. It doesn't mean they have the best player, but from a per capita standpoint,
they might not have the best 2 players.
They don't have the best 2 players. I don't think they have if you name the top 5 players on this offense just individually, 5 might be a tight end. But from a per capita basis, I don't know if there is a room on this roster playing more people than tight end. And that was something that I think we are going to have to wrap our heads around because the defense doesn't give up anything. How many times did Illinois have to get down to the 1-yard line before they finally punched one in? And how did they do it? With a triple option play. So I think this is where we're at. And now, could they open it up in the playoffs? Sure. But I think they're going to get through the regular season with control the clock. Hey, Julian, don't make mistakes. Take your chances when they're there. And at some point, we're going to get JJ a touchdown.
I agree with you that this defense obviously is as good as it is, and I think Ohio State can benefit extremely from that and win games low scoring. And I think there probably will be a game in the playoff where you say, hey, your defense is cooking right now. Don't do something stupid on offense because it's do or die at that. Right. Does it concern you at all? And I know we just talked about it. Felt like a lot of Illinois' production was late in garbage time and stuff like that. Does it concern you at all that Ohio State is going to get to a playoff game and play it maybe like the Texas game, but then the defense bends and you look up, you're like, holy crap, they're down 21-14.
It's my biggest. It's not a fear. I'm very intrigued. How many drives this season do you think Ohio State's offense took the field and it's like, you have to score here?
Probably the one against Texas where they took the shot to Carnell.
Like, that's the only drive this year where it felt like there was genuine pressure.
The last drive of the first half at Washington.
Okay, so 2 drives where we felt like genuinely you have to score here. Like, there was some level of pressure.
What they do on both those drives?
Score.
And with who? Carnell Tate on a deep shot and 3rd and 11, give it to JJ.
Like, effortlessly scored. So it's a, do you think they can't do it if they have to do it? And if the answer is no, I know they can do it if they have to do it, then again, we're back in a place where I know this is a frustrating watch. It's not a fun watch watching Ohio State play football sometimes, because you look at a car that can go at 200 miles per hour and it's choosing to go 20, even though it's on the freeway in the fast lane and there's no cops around with speedometers. But if you know you can do that whenever you want it, and the 2 times it's had to be done, they did it. So why do it when you don't have to? Until somebody makes you do it, I think we're just going to be on the edge of our seat and hoping that every time they go to flip the switch, the switch is going to flip and the light comes on.
And I think when we talk about this team flipping the switch and playing, I think it's difficult to say Ohio State needs to play how it played against Minnesota because Minnesota is an inferior team. But that kind of offensive approach is, I think, Ohio State's best. So when you see that against Minnesota paired with this defense, you say, this team is unbeatable, right? Like, it's going to be so hard to beat this team.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe the gist of what we're trying to say here is the offensive approach we've seen against Washington and Illinois, it doesn't feel like they're unbeatable. Like, if that's how they play against Miami, or as we're watching sitting here, Oregon and Indiana, they look like they're matching each other right now. So whoever loses this game by the time you're listening to this, I think we're probably at the point where we think both these teams are pretty good.
Yeah.
Ole Miss didn't look great. Texas A&M, I think, looks good. I don't know what the score of the Oklahoma game is. Like,
because that's part of this, right?
This offensive approach against those teams, I think Ohio State's beatable. Whereas when Ohio State is humming on offense like it did against Minnesota and using its receivers, it's like, listen, I think Oregon and Indiana are great. Ohio State's defense is going to get enough stops, and Indiana and Oregon's defense won't be able to get enough stops.
The defense is so good that it's frustratingly, the offense doesn't have to do anything. I know Ryan Day doesn't want to think about it. I asked that, was it this past week, where I was asking, like, hey, do you feel like your defense is so good that it takes the pressure off of your offense to feel like it has to be on? He said, I understand what you're saying. I think he understood the premise of what I was asking in that question. In fact, I think he agrees with the premise of that question.
Yeah.
The reason he went, but no, is because you can't approach it that way. You can't think about it that way. You can't think about it like, oh, it's okay that we settled for a field goal. Our defense will fix it. But they did. They settled for a field goal, and then the defense gave them the ball at the 50-yard line.
That first drive, if it's against Oregon, do you think they go for the field goal? It was 4th and 2, I think. I don't think it was 4th and 1. I think it was 4th and 2. I could be wrong, but.
And it's for the same reason they didn't go for the field goal later in this game, when it was like at the 5-yard line, where it's like, go for it, because if you don't get it, the Illinois is not driving 95 yards on your defense. Here's my question.
See, like, we're watching a drive right now where Indiana just went down the field against Oregon, using Elijah Surratt, and then using its running back outside on the perimeter and things of that nature.
They also have the weirdest formation.
And then they got to the goal line, and they went with, I don't even know if that's like jumbo. I don't know what that formation was. But it's like, we understand Ohio State going I formation on the goal line. They're at like the 35-yard line going strong.
So they're making me hate the I formation. Let me ask this, and before we take a break, and then we can continue this conversation, because this is what we're talking about.
I think the point here is we don't have an answer.
No, we don't. But I think we're talking ourselves through it. I think it's unfortunate that their 2 home games are on the opposite end of the spectrum. Their first 2 Big Ten home games. It's Minnesota, where it's like, okay, I can throw it whenever I want to. And we're at home, let's put on a show.
And then an even worse opponent.
I know, man. Penn State, man. Do you think Ohio State would have approached this game the way it did if it was at home?
No.
Northwestern's losing to Penn State as this is going on here.
Penn State's losing to Northwestern.
You know what? You're right. Wow, that's crazy. I like the post-game pod when there's interesting football games, because you get a little bit of our real-time reaction along with us talking about the game that we actually covered.
I liked when we did the post-game pod can't remember what game that was last year, but it was while Indiana was playing Michigan.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think every Ohio State fan feels what I'm going through right now.
Okay, so let's wrap this part up. Do you think Ohio State, if Washington and Illinois were the home games, would they have approached the two games the way they approached them?
I think they would approach them more like the Minnesota game.
And
what's funny is, I think if they were playing at Minnesota,
I think they would have approached Minnesota the way they approach these games. So you're on the road and you don't want to make mistakes and let the crowd get into it.
I'm gonna be honest with you too. Like I kind of wish Illinois' receiver. I thought Altmaier was awesome today.
He made some throws,
and I thought Damon Williams was awesome against Ohio State. I wish Illinois' receivers had made a few more plays simply to see what Ohio State would have done if it got to like 13-13 or whatever the scores were. If it got to 10-10.
But all of a sudden they have to flip the switch. They have to they have to put the cape on and be Ohio State.
Do you think there's a team on the schedule pre-Michigan that can do that?
I don't. I think the way the Penn State season is going right now, that game is going to turn into James Franklin is losing this team. And it's going to sideline. Yeah. He's losing this team, and this is like the punctuation of it.
It's either that or like Penn State finds some last breath to like try to make it interesting, but I'm not counting on that at this point.
Right.
Does that scare you that nobody can really do that before Michigan?
Let's take a break because I have an example I want to use for why my answer is complicated. So let's take a break and then we'll come back and continue this conversation here on Buckeye Talk.
Did you know using your browser in incognito mode doesn't actually protect your privacy? Take back your privacy with IPVanish VPN. Just one tap and all your data, passwords, communications, browsing history, and more will be instantly protected. IPVanish makes you virtually invisible online. Use IPVanish on all your devices, anytime you go online at home and especially on public Wi-Fi. Get IPVanish now for 70% off a yearly plan with this exclusive offer at ipvanish.com/audio.
And we're back here on Buckeye Talk. Stephen Means and Stefan Krajisnik after Ohio State's 34-16 win over Illinois on the road to improve to 6-0. They are bowl eligible, so they will be playing in a postgame season bowl. I know that's not just the goal here. They're trying to repeat as national champions, but they are at least bowl eligible once again.
ReliaQuest Bowl clinched.
Congratulations, Ryan Day. Once again, for the 7th straight year, you are bowl eligible. I've been thinking about this example, and it's based off of what you just said. Does it scare you that nobody can force Ohio State to actually have to like be under a pressure situation until Michigan? And even the Michigan thing, I don't know if that's as much about football as it is about culture and it is about non-X's and O's things.
It doesn't scare me if the reason we feel that way is because of Ohio State and its defense. Right. It scares me if it's directly a result of Penn State not being as good as we thought, Rutgers maybe not being as good as we thought.
But I just don't think that's their problem.
No, it's not their problem. You know, honestly, UCLA's offense is going to be kind of interesting. Could UCLA be the team that?
The juice will have worn off by then. I think right now UCLA is riding on a high of an interim coach getting a really big win for the program. That's going to probably land him a job somewhere. Or even like he'll stay as the OC here when they hire a coach. That juice is going to have worn off by then. I think this team might be 2018 Clemson, where they never have to show just how good they are until it's finally time to show just how good they are. And if you look at Clemson's schedule from that 2018 season, Trevor Lawrence, a true freshman quarterback, and they had an awesome defense. And they had some good receivers that year. Right? That's before T. Higgins was still there. The true freshman who like ended up having the back issue and it kind of killed off Justin Ross. His career kind of got sideways after that. But they had some good receivers. Furman, 48-7. Texas A&M at Texas A&M, 28-26. I think that's their like home game against Texas. I would compare those two things. Georgia Southern at Georgia Tech. Then they play Syracuse in a game where Trevor Lawrence, that was his first game as the official starting quarterback, and he gets knocked out of the game, and so they have to go to their backup. They win that game 20-23. Then they beat Wake Forest 63-3. They have a bye week, and then NC State 41-7. Florida State 59-10. Now they're starting to lay waste to teams. 77-16 against Louisville, 27-7 against Boston College, 35-6 against Duke, and then they beat South Carolina 56-35. They just never really had to show it. And I think we got to that national championship game because even the ACC championship game, they played Pitt. They beat them 42-10. And then they got the easier of the two semifinal games, and so they beat Notre Dame 30-3 in the Cotton Bowl that year. And then they get to Santa Clara against Alabama. Both teams are 14-0. And there were people like, Alabama's winning this game. They're the better team. Clemson hasn't had to play anybody. That's why they're 14-0. And then what happened? Beat the brakes off of them. Like the literal brakes off of them. Clemson never had to show how good they actually were until it was time to show how good they actually were. And they beat the brakes off of Nick Saban. And so maybe this is that. Maybe this is they don't have to score 40 to beat Illinois. They don't have to score 30 to beat Washington. They don't have to score 40 next week to beat Wisconsin. So if they do it, it's just because they scored 40. The last 2 years have showed us they don't have to score more than 24 to beat Penn State. And in fact, I don't know if they even have to score that this year, right? And then Purdue, come on, man. UCLA, come on, man. Rutgers, come on, man. Michigan's interesting, but again, that might not be for X's and O's reasons. That's because you've lost 4 straight against your rival, and rivalry games get weird, and it's on the road. So they just might not have to show everything they are. So in the meantime, let's work on things. Our defense will keep us in these games, and we'll work on things, and we'll perfect things. And then when it's time to show it, 44-16 in a national championship, after weeks of never showing just how the way people talked about Clemson before that 2018 national championship game versus afterwards, it became like the Trevor Lawrence love affair. And it's because they beat the brakes off of Bama after everybody thought they didn't play anybody all year to prove it.
When I joined the beat last year, Ohio State got off to a hot start, and we talked about how if they beat Oregon, in that game in Autzen, is Ohio State kind of just like no. We had said if Ohio State kind of cruises against Oregon, and it felt like early on they had chances to really separate in that game. Is Ohio State kind of just boring good because we look at matchups and we say, oh, this team can do this team can do that, and then Ohio State just pumps it against them, and it's like, okay, Ohio State's just way better than everyone, and these games are boring. But that was done in a way of blowing teams out because your receivers are so good, your quarterback's so good. But I think they're boring good and actually maybe kind of boring.
On purpose.
Like
they're doing this to themselves.
Yeah. And is it like, maybe there's a benefit of like not putting too much on tape. Maybe.
But I don't think
I think teams know, like, you didn't put a go route to Jeremiah Smith on tape. Like, okay, even if you did, they can't stop it.
Right. So I don't think they're hiding things. I just think they're playing slow because they might have to play 16 games. That's why they're playing slow. And you got to get through some of this is team management. I get that. So that's what it is. The approach in terms of what they are doing within the plays that they get, I think, is them trying to maximize as many parts of their offense as possible, even if that means not spending so much time on a thing you've already mastered. Is anybody concerned about Ohio State's ability to pass the ball? Is anybody concerned about Jeremiah Smith or Cardinal Tate's ability to get open?
No.
So, okay, why do they need to show us that every week? But instead, as frustrating as it is, the run game here has been so weird. They have not had a consistently elite run game since J.K. Dobbins walked out the door. Because even last year, it was good, creative, until it wasn't good and creative anymore. It's been a 6-year journey of trying to figure out how to run the ball consistently. And it's less about down by down basis and more in situationals. We got to have it. Can we get a yard? 3rd and 1 has been impossible for this team to figure out. And if you feel like the rest of your team provides such a margin for error for you to spend 12 weeks figuring that out, you might not like it, but it's what you're going to get. And one of our texters pointed this out, and I'm going to find it and then read it off on Monday on the pod. But do you feel like they are losing that margin for error when they do this? Because if you're already playing less plays and then you're going to play slow and then you're going to play this very methodical, like workman-like approach, you are taking your margin for error and you are shrinking it against a better team. But then we keep coming back to the same thing. Matt Patricia doesn't give up any points. Again, it was 20-3 at halftime. And then Illinois did the thing to try to make this game look closer than it ever. This game was never close. So these are the issues are the issues, but are there enough of an issue for somebody to actually take advantage of it? And right now, I do not think there is. Even as good as Miami has looked, this is a different animal.
Yeah.
Is this the most confusing team you've ever covered?
By far.
Yeah.
Because, and I've covered Mike Leach teams where it's like the defense is better than the offense, but it's like at least you know what the offensive identity is, and you can be like, all right, the air raid is not good this year because they don't have the personnel or there's injuries or something like that.
I don't know if the defense is 100% better than the offense. It's just getting to show how good they are every week.
I do agree with the margin for error thing because, like, Ohio State,
Oregon's punting.
Yeah. Like the Washington game, I just keep going back to, like, not a lot of possessions. So not surprising that Ohio State didn't necessarily score a ton of points.
Right.
But what if you're playing Texas A&M and there's only 7 possessions and 3 of them end in a punt?
But what if the other team's also punting? Coming back around.
Is this confusing because Ryan Day's the head coach?
Yes.
Like, You've talked about it so much. Like, Ryan Day had to rebuild this defense.
Yeah.
Like, it was in a bad spot. And now it's 2025, and it's like, this defense will win you a national title.
An offensive coach has a defensive team by choice, but also the offense might be able to do whatever it wants when it chooses to do so. Really, in theory, I feel like this is why Penn State not being good is kind of frustrating, because that would be a checkpoint game of, after this game, we have to let go of the idea that the offense is going to be good. Well, elite. It's a good offense. Like, that it's going to be elite juggernaut level. Because here's another game where they had an opportunity to let Julian Sand let it loose, and they still didn't let him do it. But now, because Penn State has lost twice, and I don't know if they're still losing the Northwestern, but the fact that Northwestern is making that competitive is the problem.
They're winning now.
Okay, so whether they pull this game out or not, Penn State looks like it's a broken team just trying to make it to the finish line. So that game just has a little less pizzazz to it and answering a very important question about where is Julian Sand in his development, not just from a sake of how good he is, but how much does his coaching staff with a brand new offensive play caller trust him? Because it feels like Julian Sand is ready to go, but the guy who is actually at the controls and calling the plays isn't. And that's an important step. And it makes me nervous about the next time Brian Hartline goes up against a quality, high-level defensive coordinator. We've gone from Texas game, hey, is Sark going to out-scheme Matt Patricia? To now, if they get on the field with Oklahoma, is Brent Venables going to out-scheme Brian Hartline?
Maybe. It's hard to believe, but Brent Venables is a very good defensive coach.
And also Fernando Mendoza just do a pick six.
That's why you play conservative. You don't put your quarterback in tough spots.
1-4-3-5-0-3-3-1-4. Anything else we want to bring up? Because I feel like this is going to continue on the Monday pod, trying to break down what this offense is and try to figure out. I think Monday pod, run game, and trying to figure out what this team's identity is after we've gotten a chance to sit with it and really break down the film versus trying to react off the key while also trying to figure out whether or not Ohio State's going to see who its Big Ten championship foe might be as long as they get there. Anything else we want to bring up before we get out of here?
I think kind of some quick hitting things like Devin Sanchez, growing pains, right? He's going to have to learn on the go. Ryan Day talked about that. Like, there's going to be highs, there's going to be lows, but at the end of the day, he got experience, stuff on film that he can learn from. Bo Jackson's fine. Had the game been tight, he would have played. I think the Fox broadcast said it was like an ankle, lower leg type of thing. Day said that if the game had called for it, Bo Jackson would have played. No update on Edric Houston. Yeah, I think that's all the quick hitting stuff. I think Ohio State's just overall very pleased with how players that hadn't been in big roles have embraced not just having big roles, but also this Ohio State standard of just because you won a game doesn't mean that you were perfect. Which is, I think, maybe why I feel less bad that after wins at Washington and at Illinois, we have kind of dug into, okay, what really happened here? What's really going on? Trying to figure it out because I know they're doing the same.
Yeah, because a win's a win, but that's a small, like Ryan, they called it like 12 sprints or something like that. It's not a marathon. It's a bunch of little sprints. You won the sprint, but there is a bigger picture here that you're trying to build towards, which is, I think, why we're having such struggles trying to figure out because I don't think it's as simple as what's wrong with the offense. It's why is the offense doing this? And it's an answer we're not going to be able to find out overnight. 614-350-3315. I don't know if that pod made any sense, but that is how I feel about the offense. It doesn't make any sense. And yet they beat Illinois 34-16. They beat Washington 24-6. They beat Texas 14-7. They beat Minnesota 42-3. So regardless, they still win these football games. That's all that matters at the end of the day, right? They're 6-0 with a chance to go 7-0 next week at Wisconsin. 614-350-3315. 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. For Stefan Krajisnik, I'm Stephen Means. Talk to you guys later.